Wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Definitely not his, the barn burner that Leif Cassidy and Ty Riley Singh was, but, we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Hager kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Zelina Vega on a pole match for that to be.
It is in the mail, my good sir. Oh, it wasn't Paul.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely, and
And then you can listen to us too. We're off to a rough start.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kirk.
I'm Roland Pulis.
And I'm Mongo.
Today it is episode 68, and it's all about ECW Living Dangerously from 1999.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think this might be one of the better all-around shows we've done in a long time. I had low expectations going into it. I mean, there were some big names and stuff, but based on the fact that WCW usually has big names and lets us down, I didn't have really high regard for the show. But I'll tell you what, after watching it, they put on a hell of a show.
I agree. It definitely was clunky in parts, like the middle of it, without jumping too far ahead. Definitely had some weird moments and like what's going on. And you could tell they're kind of feeling themselves out, because one of the things I've noticed with the ECW ones we've done is their booking is kind of all over the place, but at least they put the people together who should be together. Like what you just said versus WCW, where it's like, we're going to put Hogan and Flair together in a first blood match, and no one's going to bleed to lose. At least here, if they have a wonky stipulation, they will explain it, as we'll talk about later. So I agree. It was definitely one of the better ones, and I was happy with it.
Yeah, like last week's episode where Flair's still bleeding from it, but somehow won.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think most of the ECW shows that we've covered on this show have been really good, and this one was no exception to me. 9 total matches to discuss. The first one is the dark match. It's a tag team match with Nova and Chris Chetty getting a win over Danny Doring and Amish Roadkill. I would have thought this would have been a decent dark match to get the crowd going. Obviously, we weren't able to watch this one to know for sure, but I would have thought this one would have been a pretty good match.
Well, and they made mention of it later on in the show when Nova came out with Spike that he had competed earlier in the night, so they felt they had to mention it at that point. So clearly, where you're watching it on pay-per-view, you wouldn't have known he competed. So it must have been something notably that Joey Styles had to throw that in there, because if there would have been no other reason to do it other than the fact to say he had already done it.
No, yeah, I agree. And fun fact, I've actually met Amish Roadkill. He was at Rhode Island Comic Con a few years ago in their basement section selling his merch. Didn't realize who he was at first, because he looks completely different than he does in gimmick. And he had a big sign that said Roadkill. And I'm a huge Morning Buzz fan, and one of the guys on the Morning Buzz is named Roadkill. And I was like, that's not Roadkill. Like, I've seen him. So I go over to him and I clicked. I'm like, oh, it's the guy from ECW. And we got to shoot the shit a little bit. And we actually talked about a couple of his pay-per-views and how he loved the product. He just never really got the push he wanted. And I asked, why he didn't go to the, WWE, WCW. He just said he likes money, but he doesn't like politics. So it's kind of a cool answer. And I thought, seeing him on the card, I'm kind of ashamed we didn't get to see it, because he was a really genuinely cool dude.
That's pretty funny though. So some of the people that listen to this podcast probably have never even heard of like Greg and the Morning Buzz. So, but yeah, that's one of the characters on there. So that's funny. As soon as you said Roadkill, I was like, I know where he's going with that.
We open up the show with a singles match. You have Super Crazy and Tajiri. They go about 10 minutes here. I thought this was a pretty solid opener. I thought it was a good choice to open the show based on the rest of the card. We all know Tajiri can go, and I think Super Crazy is a little bit underrated for what he could do. He does some pretty cool spots and stuff. So I really enjoyed this one, and Super Crazy gets the win.
Like you said, I don't think they could have started this pay-per-view any better than the way they did. It was interesting to see Tajiri without pants.
Yes.
I will say that was my one takeaway when he came out. I was like, wow, Tajiri's wearing tights. Holy crap. He's not wearing
And he
tights.
looks so young.
Oh, he was just in the Cruiserweight Classic there a couple years ago too. So that just shows you that he's still out there doing it. He's obviously in great shape because if he wasn't, he wouldn't be doing it. But definitely, like Tim said, he super crazy. I think is one of the more underrated, underappreciated talents that's been out there in the last 20 years. It seems like we seem to find those guys throughout our shows, which is nice because at least we can toot their horn for a little bit and at least let people realize that, hey, if you're going to pick anything out of this card, there's no point in skipping this match. The beginning of this pay-per-view started off great, a lot of hard-hitting stuff, a lot of outside the ring stuff. It was a great way to start the show.
I mean, there's a reason, Tajiri has one of the highest rated schools in Japan because he is a legend and he is awesome in the ring. And seeing him versus Super Crazy, like you both said, I can't, add too much more, but holy crap, they can go. And you hit the nail on the head perfectly with Super Crazy being so underrated. This is what utilizing talent is. Jericho always famously said that if you can't go last, you go first. And they definitely set the tone for the show. And they showed, because this is right around the time ECW was kind of known as just the hardcore wrestling. They weren't really known as the pure wrestling show. This was these two guys going out saying, we'll show you wrestling. And they went out there and they killed it. And it's a shame that WB has a monopoly and had a monopoly from like 2001 to, basically current, that people forget about these wrestlers, like you said. So I'm also glad we can bring it up because some of these wrestlers had amazing careers outside the E, or they leave the WB and have a great career. But some people are just so blinded to WB that they don't think they exist. And Super Crazy between WCW and ECW had an amazing career. And this is a match. If you want to see how good he is, why he calls himself Super Crazy, this is a great match to watch.
Well, and that's a great point too about people leaving, because you have guys like McIntyre and Lashley who have left and come back. And I don't think they'd be the same competitor they are now without leaving and coming back. So, like you said, a lot of times people are so blinded to that one, and that's one of the things. Even back in the 90s when WCW was coming up, it was always like if you watched it on the news, it was always WWE. It wasn't wrestling. Yeah, it was WWE, and it's like no, there's more than WWF at the time. There's other organizations. So this, like you said, proves why ECW was able to stay the way they did, because they had the cult following, not just for that crazy shit that they did all the time, but for the wrestling they could pull off with some of these great matches. Like they said, that you couldn't start this pay-per-view any better, and it was a banger just to start. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have Steve Corino issuing an open challenge, which will be answered by Balls Mahoney. Balls Mahoney is going to get the win in about 4 minutes here. I think this was just to get the crowd going. Balls was really over with the crowd. That's kind of weird to say, but
strap on and balls only on wrestling past and present.
And if you want the visual, you can watch us on Spotify.
That's right. It wasn't much of a match. This guy's only 4 minutes in length, like we said. But again, I think it was, really just for a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, like you said, the crowd was red hot for balls. Crowd really wanted some balls, and they got it. So Corino pretty much got squashed. That's about what happened. He came out, said he was better than anybody, and Balls shut him up.
The one thing I always loved about Balls Mahoney's gimmick is Paul Heyman didn't give a shit about music rights. That's why you notice some wonky music in this pay-per-view. But to have him come out to AC/DC's Big Balls was always the funniest thing to pop the crowd. Like, I've got big balls. And yeah. I remember him wrestling on the WWE ECW version, their terrible version, and he got knocked out. And it's sad, that's one of the only things I remember him is he was in a match and he got knocked out, and they tried to pick him up for a suplex and he was just dead weight. But yeah, he was definitely a fan favorite, and it was a really weird, it was kind of a cluster, but like you said, I think it was just, like Tim said, to get the crowd going because Balls Mahoney was such a fan favorite. So I can't say Balls was over because that sounds weird, but I'll say Balls Mahoney was over.
Next up is another singles match. You have Little Guido, you may know him as Nunzio from WWE, getting a win over Antifez del Norte in about 5.5 minutes. This would be, if there was one filler match on the card, this would be it. This one didn't do a whole lot for me. I'm never really heard of Antifez del Norte before. But yeah, Sal Graziano gets involved in the match. But other than that, not a whole lot to discuss here. It was kind of filler for me.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, the beginning of the full-blooded Italians splitting up too. So
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't, like you said, the match wasn't exactly a barn burner. It wasn't terrible either, but it was also only a 5-minute match. Like you said, Sally got involved, and it pretty much went the way you thought it would until the ending, where the FBI teased the split up, which actually would be a full-blown split up.
Yeah, it's definitely just there for me. I didn't really care for Little Guido's character. He was a great wrestler. I just didn't care for the gimmick. But like you both have kind of said, I think it was just there to tease the FBI breaking up to go to those eventual feuds and upcoming pay-per-views and upcoming shows they did in Philly.
Well, and like you said too, not to take away from Little Guido, he's got a hell of a look, and like you said, he's got good talent. It's just he's one of those guys that just never really got over, even when he was in the WWE and he was Nunzio. No one really cared. And again, it's not any. Sometimes you're just not able to get over, even though you have a good look and you have ability. Sometimes you just can't get over. Not everybody's Dolph Ziggler. Not everybody's Zack Ryder. People that have a look and get themselves over.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up, things really pick up starting here for me in the show. You have Rob Van Dam with Bill Alfonso going to get a win over Jerry Lynn for the World Television Championship. Plenty of time here, 22 minutes. This was a solid match. Jerry Lynn can go. Rob Van Dam can go. Really enjoyed this one. I think they had really good chemistry together. I mean, this was a pretty lengthy feud that they had. The only thing about this one I didn't like is that stupid whistle from Bill Alfonso. And I hate that.
Probably worse than Jimmy Hart's megaphone.
Yes, I think it is.
And then the weird ending that wasn't too. They'd actually gone to a 20-minute draw, and the referee was going to award the title to Jerry Lynn.
Yep.
But for some reason, Jerry Lynn was like, "No, let's go 5 more minutes." I get it, but it also makes Jerry Lynn look like an idiot. Because they're going to award you the title. Why would you want? I mean, I get you want to win it. But according to the ref, you did win it. So, why would you? I just don't understand that. And I've never. They actually had to have the interview with the referee later on to kind of explain his actions, because they played it up as that they're not boxing, they don't have draws, and they don't. So he was going to award the title, which is I've never heard of that ever. I've never once heard it. And so it was kind of a cool spot. But like I said, it made Jerry look like an idiot for trying to be like, no, I want to beat him. It's like, well, the referee said you did. So. But it was definitely a great match, and it was a way to come out of maybe the last 2 matches not having as much steam. I mean, the Balls thing was over with the crowd because they wanted to see Balls Mahoney, but like you said, the Little Guido was that match was kind of just a their match, so they definitely made up for it with this one. Yeah,
this was my match of the night. I mean, I can look past the ending because that was Paul Heyman's shock booking that he does, where they kept talking about boxing and Holyfields. I don't really remember because I'm not a big boxing guy, but there must have been some sort of event with a controversial finish because they kept kind of harping on, well, we're not boxing and we don't do that. And Don King's not going to be here tonight. So something must have happened and they were just trying to play off and I think piss off the crowd. But then I think they realized that this match was too good to let it end that way. So I think that's why they kind of called it on the fly to restart it. Because these two, like Tim said, had amazing chemistry. 2 of the feuds I remember most from ECW, because I didn't watch a lot of it, like I've said before, but Taz and Sabu and RVD and Jerry Lynn are like the 2 feuds I kind of remember sticking out. And I looked it up, they had a huge feud for about 4 or 5 months afterwards. And where they both could go, I think they're the ones who kind of kept ECW on the map, because RVD and Jerry Lynn, both Hall of Famers, both put on a hell of a match. And I think the right person won, but it was a little bit of a wonky finish, and the whole having the refs explain it didn't really help out that much. So it was just weird.
And then like you said about Super Crazy, Jerry Lynn's in that same boat. I don't think a lot of people realize how good he is, and the stuff that he's done in his career holds up to some of the stuff now.
And if our listeners get a chance, check him out at his TNA/Impact run in the early 2000s, because he had an underrated run in Impact. He was probably one of the better wrestlers there. And when he phased out, he ended up becoming a coach for WWE, became a coach for Impact. He's now a coach for AEW. He's one of the most well-respected talents in the business. And he's a Hall of Famer. And he, everyone just says, oh, he's the hardcore guy, but he could go. Him and RVD could go. And it's a shame that if WWE has put him in the Hall of Fame, they have no idea what they had, because even though he wasn't there for more than the pancake, he's talented.
Wait, they were giving out pancakes? Was that that's why New Day had so many pancakes?
Probably.
Wow, I'm missing that.
No, I caught one of those pancakes once at a live event. You weren't missing much. They're frozen. People are eating them. That's the grossest thing.
Well, Kofi at one point was sticking them like in his belt, and he's throwing them. Like, why would you want a pancake that was touching the belt and his belly?
Didn't.
That's gross. Like, oh.
I was like, oh, they threw a pancake, and it was next. I was like, I want to know if they were real because they didn't look real when they landed because like bounced. I'm like, pancakes shouldn't bounce. It should just go blue. So I grabbed it, like, oh, it's frozen. I threw it back down, and some kid's like, can I have that? I'm like, go for it. And he straight up ate it. I'm like, okay, it's been in Biggie's singlet with his baby oil because you know that dude's covered in baby oil. It's clearly frozen. And then it's been on the, Verizon Wireless, which is our local arena around here, which is a gross-ass floor. So it's like everything wrong with the situation you're ingesting it. So that kid doesn't have to worry about COVID because he's probably already dead.
He's either immune or dead. He doesn't need a COVID shot or he's already gone. One or the other. Yikes.
Next up is a match that I think kind of personifies ECW's reputation as the hardcore extreme company. You have New Jack getting a win over Mustafa in about 9.5 minutes here. They're former tag team partners. Mustafa paid off the Dudley Boys to take out New Jack was the storyline here. But there was a lot of crazy stuff in here, which you wouldn't expect nothing less from New Jack. As a side note, if you haven't seen the Dark Side of the Ring episode about New Jack, definitely check that out because you'll see how crazy this guy really is.
It explains a lot, put it that way. I mean, you not being able to see a lot of the ECW stuff from back in the day because they didn't have that exposure or not have, it was on late at night or whatever. You kind of heard about New Jack, but you never get to see a lot of it because it was always that stuff that was on later because of the stuff he would do in matches. So that Dark Side of the Ring definitely filled in the gaps and made you realize how crazy he was. This match, the only thing that was weird about this match is at the very end, they do the table spot where New Jack dives from like 20 feet, creams him. They should have just called the match then. Like it should have been done. Instead, security and doctors helped them back to the ring for New Jack to pin Mustafa. Why? Like I don't make it a false count anywhere match so that way they can just pin him afterwards or like I don't. But it was the only weird spot about that whole thing. That match was very intense in some cool spots where they both are beating the hell out of each other. But yeah, for him to set him up on that table, dive 20 feet off the balcony, and then have guys one on each side like pull them back to the ring and roll them into the ring, it's like, why? I don't get it. It was weird.
I'm surprised New Jack was okay after because he missed that table by a good like 5 feet. Like his face basically broke the table.
Yeah, he came up a little short. He definitely, it was all knees to concrete essentially. Yeah.
And I don't want to crap on New Jack too much, but because he was crazy and hardcore, but just not a good person. And in this match too, he didn't sell shit. Like that's one thing that really stood out is he wasn't selling anything. Like Mustafa would like whack him with something, he would just keep going, and it's like he obviously just had no regard for his opponents. And like Tim and Roland both said, you need to watch Dark Side of the Ring so you can see that he didn't care. He liked to hurt people. He wasn't in wrestling for the talent. He wasn't in wrestling for the storytelling or the athleticism. He just liked to straight up beat the hell out of people and get paid for it. Yeah, that's what it was. I mean, he used to bring shivs to the ring. Like you both said, you hear stories and legends. And I remember being in school and it's like, oh, I heard New Jack killed the guy. And then it was the mass transit incident, which is what Dark Side covered, which it's about an hour from us. And I used to go down to Wonderland, because they would do wrestling events there. Didn't see that ECW event, but I saw the other events they've had there. And it's crazy to think that somewhere close to our little hometown had New Jack almost murdering a kid, because he cut his forehead so deep. And then this match, he basically just destroys his former tag team from the Gangstars or whatever you want to call them. But it was just a weird clunky match. And that finish, like you said, Roland, was just, it didn't make sense. Like why drag him into the ring? They should just pin him right there. Cause clearly they didn't care about rules because earlier in the night, the referee was going to give Jerry Lynn a title.
Or the referee could have done just awarded the match to New Jack. Been like, Mustafa's out, New Jack's stumbling around. He wins. He's the last guy standing. Let's go home. Like, I don't, right. But it just goes to show you, I mean, that mass transit incident of New Jack getting pissed off the guy couldn't blade right. That's exactly what it turned out to be. He was supposed to blade. The kid couldn't blade right, so the New Jack stabbed him in the head with a scalpel. And, So like Tim brought it up. Watch the Dark Side of the Ring. I know it's on Vice. It's all over YouTube. You should have no problem finding it. If you haven't watched it yet, watch it because then you'll figure out. It'll fill in all the gaps for you as to who New Jack was.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we see the Dudley Boys. They're going to issue an open challenge. So it's their second open challenge of the night. It's going to be answered by Spike Dudley and Nova. They're quickly, destroyed. And then Spike Dudley does, crowd surfing, and gets taken out after that. But then everybody's favorite Sid comes out. And the Dudley Boys cut a kind of uncomfortable promo on him that you can't repeat today. And that's the one thing I want to mention about the show is they randomly bleep out certain things and then they air the same words. So I don't understand the censorship here. But
yeah, I don't understand how you don't bleep out the word that Bubba Dudley called Sid in the middle of the ring. A gay slur essentially, and I'm not going to say it here because I have too much class to even say it. But yeah, like you said, I don't know how that doesn't get bleeped out. I don't get it.
Yeah, that was another thing that was just like, what is going on? Like, this felt like they just had nothing for this time slot and they were waiting for the main events. And they were like, let's just do this. This felt like a cluster. This is between New Jack and this is what I was saying earlier when it kind of felt like it fell off the rails after RVD. Like after the RVD match, it just kind of felt like it just derailed the whole show. And thank God we have two good matches coming up that kind of picked it back up and saved it. But these two matches were weird. And then that promo, I had to rewind. I'm like, did he just say, whoa? And again, also not going to repeat it because it's not something you should be saying. No. And I get you're trying to get cheap heat. And that's, what the Dudleys were known for. They were essentially the MJF type of character before MJF, where they would say things you'd be like, holy shit, did you just say that? But then again, different times, not to make excuses for it, but I don't think it ages well, and it was just a cluster. This is a match that really, if you don't see it, you're not missing anything.
Well, and like you said, it seems like every time the W's are on one of these pay-per-views, they say stuff that we're like, oh, and we just cringe because it's like, wow, you shouldn't have been saying it then, and you definitely can't say it now. So
exactly,
absolutely. Next up is a tag team match. You have Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas with Francine getting a win over the Impact Players, which was Justin Incredible and Lance Storm, with Jazz, Jason Knight, and Don Marie, which I think this is the first ECW show where we've only seen Jason Knight one time. He's usually out there like 10 times. This was a great match. The storyline is Shane Douglas was ready to retire, and he was going to pass the torch on to Tommy Dreamer, but, the Impact Players thought the torch had been passed on to them. So that kind of set up this match. Really solid match. I'm not the biggest Shane Douglas fan, but he impressed me in this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of Shane Douglas, they think of Dean Douglas, they think of his failed WWF runs where they didn't know it, when the Click chased him out supposedly, and it could be, it could not be, we don't know, we don't even have to go there, but that's what a lot of people say that the Click ruined people's careers and all this stuff. But clearly Shane Douglas wasn't phased by it because he had a fantastic career in ECW, and if anything saved he saved the company. I think he's one of those handful of guys that people paid to see. So, and Tommy Dreamer, the heart and soul, the innovator of violence for ECW. This match, I didn't know what to expect with this match based on the fact that at the beginning they were kind of teasing that Dreamer was going to get turned on by Shane Douglas. And at one point they had that kind of tease where it looked like Douglas was going to turn on Tommy Dreamer, but he didn't. So a lot of shenanigans with Jazz and Jason Knight, Don Marie, and Francine towards the end. Cyrus, the Virus, shows up at one point. So Don Callis makes a random appearance and drops a headbutt into Don Marie's nether regions. Weird towards the end. The match itself was great, but I think unfortunately it's like the exploding death match where you remember the stuff at the end, unfortunately. So that the stuff at the end kind of ruined the feel of the match. If they had just left it at that and maybe just attacked him and left and not had it this big drawn out thing, it might have been better, but the match itself was great.
Yeah, I agree. Like the meat and the potatoes of this match were great. It's just the dessert was terrible. To use that terrible analogy, but it just, you knew it was gonna be a cluster when everyone was out there, when Jason was out there, Jazz, when they were all out there, like this is gonna be a cluster because they're not gonna have this many people ringside and have not get involved. It's one of the tropes in wrestling too that I can't stand, where it's like, oh, there's like 5 people coming out for each faction, so there's just going to be a brawl or a melee or shenanigans, and that's what it was. But the actual match itself, like Roland said, Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas, heart and soul of ECW, both could work. Justin Credible is a great worker. Another one that kind of went to WWE and had kind of a lackluster run, was talented. And then Lance Storm, who's like watching paint dry personality wise, just great wrestler. But God, if you look up mediocre personality in the dictionary, his picture's right there looking sideways. Like it's just I don't know. Like I don't think he could get anything over. Like he's so monotone, and every time he talks, I'm like, he needs a manager. He's too good a wrestler. He should just be the strong sound type, because when he opens his mouth, you fall asleep. Like, I mean, I love, if anyone here remembers, Al Snow used to just rib him every week with, oh, I watched the Lance Storm match because I couldn't fall asleep. Like that's how I felt, with this. Every time he was in the ring, I'm like, oh, can we put Justin Credible back in the ring, please? But yeah, the endings and the shenanigans ruined it, but the actual match was good. And I think that it's just, that's one thing that this pay-per-view kind of was weird about, was the endings weren't that great, but the matches were great.
If I can be serious for a minute.
Awesome.
We have made it to our main event, which was an extreme death match to unify the ECW and FCW World Heavyweight Championships. I didn't quite understand that, because they kept saying the FCW title is not recognized. So why would you unify an unrecognized title with their heavyweight title? But
yet Sabu's holding Taz's title essentially.
Yeah,
it's unrecognized.
With that little piece of tape on it that just said Sabu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was weird. It was leftover tape from his jaw, actually.
Yeah. So Taz can get the win over Sabu. I thought this was a really solid way to end the show. I mean, Taz was red hot here as the champion. He cut a really good promo to begin the show, and he kind of dissed some WCW and WWF wrestlers at the time, and kind of told Sabu what he's going to do. And
he was doing it during. There were spots in the match where he was like pounding on Sabu and saying, "Come on, Hogan! Come on, Flair!"
Yeah.
And he's like, during the match.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought this was a really good way I was really entertained by this match, and happy to see that Taz got the win here.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is what you remember when you think of ECW. You think of these type of matches. You think of these two guys. Like I said, if you're going to think of ECW, you're thinking about pretty much five guys. You're thinking of Sabu, you're thinking of Dreamer, you're thinking of Taz, the Dudleys, and then Shane Douglas and RVD. So 6 guys. I mean, counting the Dudleys as one thing. Those are who you're thinking of, honestly. Everybody else was good and did their own thing, but those are the big guys that came out of ECW. If you were to make a Mount Rushmore, it would have the Dudleys as one weird looking head and then like a fifth head off to the side. But those are the guys. And
you're not putting Antifest Del Norte on there?
No, and unfortunately, sorry, Spike Dudley, you don't get on there. It's just even on Stein Guy Dudley, Big Dick Dudley, Joe Gertner. Sorry, you're not getting on there. But this definitely was less Alfonso at the whistle this time too, which was nice. Little bit here and there, but it definitely was fantastic to see them end with a match that was a match. They fought each other. They did some crazy high spots, did their stuff, some nasty suplexes by Taz, which is what he was known for. And it was a wrestling match. Yeah, there was some shtick of it being extreme and whatnot, but it was what it was known for. And it was great way to end the show.
This is a few months before Taz would leave ECW. He would actually show up on Raw, I believe, with the title pretty soon to kind of tease his appearance at the Rumble. And it was weird just how they booked this storyline, because they had some great chemistry and a great feud, and it almost was like a disrespect match, but then at the end he did the whole I respect you thing. So I do like, because this is vintage Taz kind of switching between heel and face, and you don't really know what you're going to get with him. And Sabu was always fucking hurt. Like I don't understand. Like that dude, he's Botchamania's favorite darling. That's all I got to say, because great wrestler, but he took so many chances. And there's a reason why, to quote JR, why they call him high risk moves, because he was always getting hurt. And I'm pretty sure this was a legitimate injury. He shouldn't have been wrestling, because he had broken his neck at this point. His jaw had broken. He broke his arm in one match I remember watching, and his arm was just dangling, and he's trying to do a suplex and his arm's just dangling. And he does not like to stop. I think he's legit crazy. And this match definitely showed both guys could work. And like you said, those suplexes were nasty, and it was a great way to end the show and a great way to end the card. I'd probably give this a solid 6.5.
Yeah, I'd say it was in the 6 to 7 range. I also want to point out that spot in the Tajiri Super Crazy match where Super Crazy missed the springboard and everybody was chanting "You fucked up," which I thought was awesome. And even Tajiri's pointing at him like, "Ha ha, you fucked up."
Yes.
The fact that they were able to play off that was awesome. It was a great spot. So.
Yeah, the ECW crowd makes the shows. The ECW crowds are probably some of the hottest crowds in wrestling.
That's our rundown of Living Dangerously 1999. Coming up for you guys next Saturday at 5, we're going to cover WrestleMania 19, which features Austin and Rock. It's part of the trilogy, so looking forward to covering that. Tell your friends about our podcast. Share the Spotify link to them. We appreciate all the listeners we've been getting. And until
the following week, we're going back to NXT as well, right?
We're going to NXT TakeOver Dallas.
We're going all over the map for you guys these 3 weeks, 4 weeks over WCW. So
take care. Until next week, I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present.
I hope you're all having a nice day.